The desolate planet of Zarathus Prime lay dormant in the void of space, its surface scarred by eons of war and cataclysmic events. On this forsaken world, the tomb worlds of the Necrons slumbered, their ancient structures buried beneath layers of ash and dust. It was a place forgotten by time, but it harbored a secret that would soon awaken and unleash a silent horror upon the galaxy. Dominus, a high-ranking servant of the Omnissiah, had received unsettling reports of strange occurrences on Zarathus Prime. Whispers of the dead stirring and ancient tombs shifting in the darkness had reached the ears of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Sensing an opportunity to uncover lost Xenos technology and to prevent its corruption from spreading, Dominus led an expedition to the planet. The planet's atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly stillness as Dominus descended upon the surface. The once burning sun cast an eerie glow on the desolation, revealing the skeletal remains of a once thriving civilization now entombed in sorrow. Dominus, accompanied by a cohort of Skitarii warriors, marched in precise formation toward the Necron catacombs.
"This data site holds potential,"
Dominus intoned, her voice a blend of synthetic modulation and human inflection.
"Prepare to catalog all findings for the glory of the Omnissiah."
The air inside the tomb was cold and metallic, a stark contrast to the searing heat outside. As they delved deeper, the corridors became a labyrinth of alien geometry, disorienting and unsettling. The faint hum of dormant machinery resonated through the air, a sound that seemed to awaken fragments of memory within Dominus's augmented mind. The squad advanced with martial precision, yet the desolation seemed to swallow every sound. Even the metallic footsteps of the Skitarii were absorbed by the eerie stillness, as if the planet itself rejected their presence. Dominus, ever logical, noticed a peculiar anomaly. Their Auspex scanners registered not mere silence, but a void, an absence of data, as if the world around them had been stripped of all signals, of all life. Strange hieroglyphs adorned the walls, telling tales of an ancient and malevolent race that had ruled this galaxy in eons past. Dominus extended one of her mechadendrites, scanning the inscriptions with a noospheric array.
"Necron script,"
Dominus murmured, her binary cant translating the symbols into fractured meaning.
"Records of a great harvest. The eradication of countless organic systems. This tomb is no mere relic. It is a monument to annihilation."
The deeper they ventured, the more apparent it became that the tomb worlds were awakening. Whispering echoes reverberated through the cold corridors, carrying a mournful lament that seemed to emanate from the very stone itself. Dominus's optical augments flickered, recalibrating to compensate for the faint fluctuations in energy. A faint, metallic hiss echoed through the darkened corridors, a whisper slithering through the tomb's endless passages. Dominus's audio sensors detected fragmented bursts of binary, unintelligible yet unmistakably deliberate. The very walls seemed to hum in response, their alien engravings shimmering with an almost imperceptible pulse. Something was waking, and it was listening.
"Dominus, unknown readings detected. Power levels are increasing,"
intoned a Skitarii vanguard with a voice monotone yet tense.
"Acknowledged,"
Dominus replied.
"Remain in combat readiness. This tomb is no longer dormant."
In the heart of the tomb, they stumbled upon a colossal chamber bathed in an unnatural green glow. At its center stood an ancient monolith, its surfaces etched with arcane symbols that pulsed with a malevolent energy. The air grew thick with anticipation as the monolith's dormant power hummed to life.
"By the machine god, this structure, it contains a power source beyond our understanding,"
Dominus intoned, her voice almost reverent. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and from the depths of the chamber, mechanical beings emerged. Necron warriors, once statuesque and immobile, now moved with an otherworldly grace. The Skitarii cohort opened fire, their radium carbines and plasma calivers crackling with lethal intent, but their weapons seemed feeble against the metallic might of the awakened Necrons. As the Necron warriors advanced, the Skitarii's radium fire scattered harmlessly against their adamantine bodies. Some Xenos fell, only to rise moments later, their shattered forms reassembling with cold efficiency. A Castellan robot, its power fists crackling with energy, charged forward, delivering a crushing blow to the chest of a Necron. The impact sent the Xeno sprawling, yet its metallic body twisted unnaturally, reshaping itself in mere seconds. Its hollow eyes reignited with a burning green glow, turning its gaze toward the Mechanicus force with ancient, undying malice. As the battle unfolded, Dominus glimpsed a figure that sent a chill through even her augmented circuits, an imposing Necron overlord crowned with an ornate headdress. Its eyes, cold and devoid of emotion, locked onto Dominus with an intensity that transcended the material realm.
Calculations suggest a high probability link to Tomb World command protocols,
Dominus muttered.
This is no mere guardian. It is a master of its kind.
The tide of battle turned against the Adeptus Mechanicus as more and more Necrons rose from their slumber. Dominus, realizing the futility of their struggle, ordered a retreat. Yet, as they retraced their steps through the twisting corridors, they found the tomb closing in on them, the very walls rearranging themselves to seal their fate.
The tomb is responding to our presence. It adapts. It hunts.
Dominus observed with mechanical calm, though even she could not mask the underlying tension. The air within the labyrinth thickened, pressing against them like an unseen force. Dominus attempted to access the Noospheric network, searching for a viable escape route, but received only garbled data, distorted echoes of her own thought patterns, as if the tomb world itself was mirroring her mind. The realization struck like an electrical surge. They were not merely trapped, they were being watched, studied, and anticipated. The squad became ensnared in a nightmarish maze, haunted by the echoes of the Necron awakening. Each turn led to a dead end, and the walls seemed to whisper malevolent secrets to the lost souls trapped within. Panic set in as Dominus and her warriors struggled against the encroaching darkness. In the heart of the labyrinth, they stumbled upon an ancient chamber adorned with a massive sarcophagus. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding as Dominus approached the ominous structure. With trepidation, she pried open the lid, revealing an all-metal figure, the remains of a long-forgotten Necron lord. As the lid creaked open, an ethereal wail echoed through the chamber, freezing the blood in their veins. The Necron lord's eyes flickered with an unnatural glow, and a spectral voice resonated in their minds, recounting the annals of an empire long entombed. From the recesses of the chamber, shifting forms began to emerge. They were unlike the Necron warriors, sleeker, unnervingly fluid in their movements. Their silhouettes flickered as though they existed only partially in reality, their forms phasing in and out of sight. A chilling presence wrapped around the intruders as these spectral constructs glided toward them with predatory grace. Dominus recognized their distinct forms. Wraiths. Not flesh, not holy machine, but entities suspended between realms, silent hunters that fed not on sustenance, but on fear itself.
Flesh fades,
the voice intoned,
but the metal endures. Your Imperium is but a flicker against the eternal.
Dominus felt the weight of millennia pressing upon her as the ancient entity sought to share its collective consciousness. The tomb quaked with the power of awakening, and Dominus, realizing the inevitability of their fate, prepared to face the silent horror that lurked within the Necron tombs. The very fabric of reality seemed to fray as the Necron's inscrutable plan unfolded. In the depths of the tomb worlds, the Necron awakening sent tremors across the galaxy. As the Adeptus Mechanicus grappled with the silent horror beneath Zarathus Prime, a new chapter in the ancient conflict between the Necrons and the living had begun, one that would echo through the cosmos in silent waves of dread. In the darkest corners of the Imperium, where shadows clung to secrets like a shroud, Inquisitor Adela Ravenna pursued the whispers of heresy that slithered through the halls of power. The heart of the Imperial Inquisition was a labyrinth of deceit, and Ravenna's unyielding gaze sought to expose the dark secrets that festered within. Assigned to investigate the high-ranking echelons of the Administratum, Ravenna delved into the labyrinthine archives of the hive world Secundus Siderax. The air within the dimly lit halls was heavy with the scent of ancient parchment and the distant hum of machinery. The vastness of the records mirrored the sprawl of the hive, a city that reached into the heavens, its foundations lost in the abyss below. As Ravenna pored over the dusty tomes, she discovered a pattern, a thread of corruption that wove through the highest levels of bureaucracy. Whispers of forbidden pacts and clandestine dealings reached her ears. The very foundations of the Imperium seemed tainted, and the Inquisitor's pursuit intensified. The deeper Ravenna dug into the archives, the more the air seemed to weigh upon her. The scent of ink and decay blended into something more sinister, an almost metallic tang that she had only ever associated with blood and old machine oil. The flickering lumen strips cast uneven pools of light along the towering stacks of records, and for a moment she could have sworn that the shadows shifted when she wasn't looking. The trail led her to a secluded chamber deep within the Administratum's archives. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the towering shelves of forbidden knowledge. Ravenna, accompanied only by her ever-loyal acolyte, entered the dimly lit chamber, her silhouette a fleeting specter against the towering stacks of parchment.
Do you feel it, Inquisitor?
The acolyte whispered, his voice barely audible.
This place, it's alive with secrets.
And lies.
Ravenna replied coldly.
Lies that have thrived in the dark for far too long.
A sudden creak echoed through the chamber, the sound of something heavy shifting in the dark. Ravenna froze, her fingers brushing the grip of her bolt pistol. The acolyte tensed beside her, his eyes darting toward the towering shelves. The silence that followed was oppressive, but the Inquisitor did not waver. Whatever presence lurked here, be it a trick of the mind or something far worse, she would face it with steel and resolve. In the center of the room stood a lectern adorned with an ancient grimoire, its pages bound in flesh and inked with the blood of the heretical. Ravenna, driven by an unquenchable thirst for truth, opened the tome. As she deciphered the blasphemous text, a chill gripped her heart. The secrets within the grimoire unveiled a hidden cabal within the highest ranks of the Administratum, a shadowy assembly that had struck unholy bargains to maintain the Imperium's veneer of order. The names of revered figures were stained with treachery, and the very bureaucracy meant to safeguard humanity had succumbed to the tendrils of the warp. A whisper echoed in the chamber, a disembodied voice that seemed to resonate from the very pages of the grimoire.
Inquisitor Ravenna, you tread on paths darker than you can fathom.
It murmured. The whisper did not fade. It lingered in the stagnant air, growing fainter but never truly vanishing. As Ravenna turned the pages of the grimoire, her auspex flickered, briefly detecting an energy fluctuation, then going dead. For a moment, she wondered if the corruption she sought had already begun to infect the very walls around her. The Administratum was a rotting beast, its arteries clogged with lies and decay. Was it possible that some malign force had been feeding on that corruption all along? Unfazed, Ravenna continued her quest. Her investigation led her to the underbelly of Secundus Siderax, where the destitute and forgotten languished in squalor. Beneath the hive's towering spires, she discovered a clandestine cult that worshipped the warp in the shadows, their rituals obscured by the perpetual gloom.
How deep does this corruption run?
The acolyte muttered, glancing nervously at the flickering lights above them.
Deep enough to touch the stars,
Ravenna replied.
We are but the scalpel. The cancer has spread across the body of the Imperium.
The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, dancing on the walls distorted by the smoke of a ritual. And there they were, the cultists. They had surrounded the altar, immersed in a deep trance, their faces obscured by hoods and makeshift masks. Every movement they made seemed to be guided by an invisible force, as if the room itself were breathing along with them. A palpable tension filled the air, as if time itself were bending under the weight of the ritual. A gust of warm, rancid air passed through the chamber, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of burnt flesh and something older, something unnatural. The flickering lights above dimmed for the briefest moment, and in that instant, Ravenna thought she saw something beyond the cultists, a shape barely visible, as if reality itself was thinning. It loomed behind the altar, a presence that had no true form yet was impossibly vast. The altar, placed at the center of the room, was covered in mystical objects and obscene symbols, each of them burning with a malevolent intensity. The sound of their chants mixed with the beat of drums, creating an infernal symphony that seemed to merge with the very heartbeat of Secundus Siderax. The cultists, dressed in tattered rags, recoiled at the intrusion of the Inquisitor and her acolyte, but they did not stop. In the room, they chanted in a forbidden tongue, their bodies moving in rhythmic motions as if possessed by a force greater than themselves. The sound was deep and shrill, a melody that seemed to warp reality itself, pulling the mind toward the precipice of madness. The air thickened with malevolence as warp energies coalesced, twisting reality itself. Nightmarish entities materialized, their forms shifting between dimensions. The cultists' faces contorted with madness, advanced with unholy zeal, their bodies twisted by the touch of the warp. The temperature in the room plummeted, breath turning to mist as an unseen force pressed against them. The cultists, their bodies writhing in unnatural convulsions, did not stop their chanting. Some of them bled from their eyes, their skin splitting as something beyond comprehension clawed its way through the veil. The very air rippled, thick with an oppressive weight, as if the walls themselves were straining to contain the entity that sought passage. A battle of wills ensued as Ravenna confronted the warp-spawned abominations. Bolter rounds tore through the twisted entities, banishing them back to the immaterial realm. But the cultists' malevolent chants persisted, threatening to ensnare the Inquisitor's mind in the suffocating grip of the warp.
Ravenna!
The acolyte shouted, his voice breaking through the din.
They're calling something! Something immense!
Then we silence them.
Ravenna snapped, her voice like steel.
Their words are the key to this madness.
As Ravenna fought to maintain her sanity, her acolyte, overwhelmed by the psychic onslaught, fell to his knees, clutching his head in torment. The Inquisitor's determination wavered, but with a surge of indomitable will, she pressed on, her psychic resilience a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. The cult's leader, a figure shrouded in a tattered cloak, stepped forward. His voice resonated with unnatural sonority as he spoke of forbidden knowledge and the inevitability of chaos consuming the Imperium. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around him as he invoked the power of the warp.
We are the heralds, and the galaxy shall burn,
the leader hissed, his voice like nails on glass. Ravenna, fueled by righteous fury, confronted the cult leader in a psychic duel that transcended the material realm. The air crackled with unseen energies as the Inquisitor fought to banish the warp-touched presence. The cult leader's voice echoed in her mind, low and mocking, as if it resonated from the very warp itself.
You think you can stop us, Inquisitor? You who cling to your Emperor's lies, believing them to be salvation. The Imperium you serve is a rotting corpse, a crumbling monument built on fear and blind faith. The truth lies in the warp, the only true reality. Do you not see? This galaxy, this empire, is already dead, and all you do is delay the inevitable. You fight for a corpse king, Inquisitor, and in the end, even you will see the truth.
The cult leader's words did not merely reach Ravenna's ears. They slithered into her mind, a venomous whisper that sought to take root. For the briefest moment, she felt something claw at the edges of her thoughts, twisting her perception. She saw the Imperium not as the monolithic bulwark of humanity, but as a crumbling ruin, propped up by superstition and fear. The doubt was fleeting, burned away by sheer will, but the fact that it had been there at all made her grip tighten around her weapon. He smiled through the chaos, his eyes glowing with unnatural light as tendrils of warp energy writhed around him, distorting the very fabric of space.
You are nothing but a servant of a decaying order. The Emperor's light is but a flicker against the eternity of the warp. You cannot save what is already lost, and when the darkness consumes you, you will understand. There is no victory against it, only the eventual surrender.
With a final incantation, she shattered the cult leader's psychic defenses, sending a shockwave that reverberated through the warp. As the cultist fell, the acolyte stumbled to his feet, shaken but alive.
What now, Inquisitor?
He asked, his voice hoarse.
Now?
Ravenna replied, her gaze fixed on the fading shadows.
We go higher. The true enemy sits not in the dirt, but near the golden throne of power.
The chamber fell silent, the cultists defeated, and the warp energies dissipated like shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a voxcaster crackled to life. A distorted voice murmured fragmented phrases in a tongue that was neither High Gothic nor any known dialect of the Administratum. The sound sent an involuntary shudder down the acolyte's spine. It was not a message. It was a repetition, a phrase spoken again and again, as if something long forgotten was trying to be remembered. Ravenna, battered but unbroken, stood amidst the remnants of her struggle.
Adela, do you ever wonder if we're fighting the wrong war?
The acolyte asked, his voice trembling as they regrouped in the aftermath of the battle. Ravenna shot him a sharp glance.
We fight the war we must. Doubt is the first step toward corruption.
But this corruption, it's everywhere,
he persisted, his eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting them to come alive.
Even in the Administratum, even in those who claim to serve the Emperor. How can we purge it all? Is it even possible?
Ravenna's gaze softened slightly, though her tone remained resolute.
Our task is not to succeed, but to endure. Faith is not about victory. It is about standing firm, no matter how hopeless it seems.
She stepped closer, lowering her voice.
Remember this, Acolyte. It is better to die in service to the Emperor than to live under the shadow of heresy.
As they ascended the winding stairs back toward the surface, the acolyte broke the silence again.
Do you think they're right?
He asked hesitantly. Ravenna halted, her voice low but firm.
What if chaos is inevitable? What if we're just delaying the fall?
Her expression darkened, her voice sharpened.
Chaos thrives on doubt. It whispers lies and twists fear into acceptance. If you let it take root, I will have to purge it myself.
The acolyte swallowed hard, nodding.
I understand, Inquisitor.
Good. Now let's finish this,
Ravenna replied.
We bring these truths to light no matter the cost.
As Ravenna and the acolyte continued their ascent, the weight of their conversation lingered in the air. The acolyte's face, once filled with doubt, now seemed to carry a subtle change. His eyes darted to the shadows around them, and for a moment, a faint, almost imperceptible smile curled at the corner of his lips. He quickly wiped it away, his expression returning to one of resolve. As they climbed, the light of the hive city grew stronger, yet the weight in Ravenna's chest did not ease. Her acolyte walked beside her, his expression neutral, his hands steady. And yet, something was different. The way he carried himself, the way his eyes lingered in the dark corners of the stairwell, watching something that was not there. She said nothing, not yet, but she had seen it before. The first seed of corruption rarely screamed, it whispered. But for a fleeting second, Ravenna noticed the shift in his demeanor. She glanced over, but he had already masked it, his features hardened once again. The thought passed her, unspoken, but it lingered like a quiet shadow in her mind. Could the darkness have already begun to claim him? Ravenna, focused on their surroundings, did not notice the shift in his demeanor. She was consumed by the weight of her thoughts, her mind set on the task ahead.
There is no time for weakness, and there's no end to this struggle,
she muttered to herself, her voice barely audible over the echo of their steps.
Only an endless sequence of victories that are nothing more than delays.
She paused for a moment, gripping the hilt of her bolter tightly.
But that's why we exist, isn't it?
She continued, her tone firm despite the shadows in her eyes.
Not to win, but to make sure the darkness never wins completely.
As she emerged from the depths of Secundus Siderax, the weight of her discoveries pressed upon Ravenna's shoulders. The Inquisition, meant to safeguard the Imperium, was entwined in a web of corruption and heresy. The labyrinth of deceit extended far beyond Secundus Siderax, reaching into the very heart of the Imperium. The planet Thramoria, a desolate wasteland ravaged by war, bore witness to the nightmarish descent of an Imperial knight into madness. House Morholt, renowned for its noble lineage of knight pilots, patrolled the war-torn plains, guarding the remnants of a once thriving civilization. Sir Alaric Morholt, a scion of the house, piloted the mighty knight gallant known as the Iron Sentinel. For years, the Iron Sentinel had stood as a stalwart guardian, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. But unbeknownst to the inhabitants of Thramoria, a malevolent force had taken root within the war machine. The chaos that plagued Thramoria was not new. Over decades, the veil between the material and immaterial had worn thin. Cults whispered prayers to forbidden entities in the ruins of shattered cities, and dark rituals seeped into the soil like a spreading infection. This unseen corruption had found a foothold in the Iron Sentinel, a once proud defender now cursed by proximity to the insidious influence of the warp. As the planet faced the relentless onslaught of chaos incursions, Sir Alaric's dreams were haunted by nightmarish visions. In the inky blackness of his restless sleep, he saw the Iron Sentinel tainted by the warp's touch, its once noble spirit twisted into a malevolent force hungering for destruction. The visions grew worse with each passing night. Sir Alaric dreamed of walking through halls of bone and iron, his armor dripping with ichor, while unseen entities whispered promises of power and eternity. Faces of his ancestors, those who had piloted knights before him, stared from the walls, empty, hollow, and accusing. When he awoke, drenched in sweat, he could still feel the phantom touch of claws raking his soul. Each night, the dreams intensified, seeping into Sir Alaric's waking hours. He became haunted by an incessant whisper, a warped amalgamation of machinery and malevolence beckoning him to embrace the abyss. The voice promised power beyond mortal comprehension, but at the cost of his humanity.
Sir Alaric, you have tasted the void, but you are not yet whole. Embrace us, become more than flesh and steel. We offer you eternity, power, dominion over all. But first, you must give yourself to us entirely.
The voice seemed to emanate from every corner of the cockpit, reverberating through his bones. Sir Alaric shouted back into the void.
No, I serve the Emperor, not you.
The reply came, cold and inevitable.
The Emperor has abandoned you. Only we remain. Submit, and all shall be yours.
Tormented and sleep-deprived, Sir Alaric wrestled with the malevolent force that sought to claim him. The Iron Sentinel, once a steadfast ally, now pulsed with an unnatural energy, its once gleaming armor tarnished by the touch of the warp. The Knight's machine spirit, corrupted and twisted, whispered dark secrets into Sir Alaric's mind. As the days passed, Alaric's grip on reality frayed. He found himself losing time, moments where his body moved, but his mind felt as though it had been submerged in an abyss. He would blink and find himself staring at the Iron Sentinel's armor, his gauntleted hands trembling, his own voice whispering words he did not remember speaking. His every step left echoes in the halls of House Moorholt's stronghold, as though something unseen walked beside him. One fateful night, the whispers became a deafening roar. As Sir Alaric attempted to pray to the Emperor for clarity, the Vox systems within the Iron Sentinel activated unbidden, filling the cockpit with a cacophony of voices.
We are one,
they chanted.
There is no division between flesh and steel, between mortal and God. Take your place among the eternal.
His desperate cries to silence the voices went unanswered as the Knight's systems flared to life, casting a sickly glow that illuminated the barren plains outside. In the still of the night, the Iron Sentinel moved of its own accord, its colossal form prowling the desolate plains. Sir Alaric, trapped in a waking nightmare, found himself unable to control the war machine that had become an extension of his soul. The Knight moved with an eerie grace, as though dancing to the rhythm of forbidden entities. Word of the anomalous behavior of the Iron Sentinel reached the Adeptus Mechanicus. A detachment of tech priests was dispatched to investigate, their augments humming as they approached the haunted night. The air crackled with an unnatural tension as the tech priests scanned the war machine systems. To their horror, they discovered that the warp's influence had infiltrated the very core of the night. The machine spirit, once a bastion of loyalty to the Imperium, now resonated with the chaotic energies of the immaterial realm. The tech priests, their faces masked by augmentations, debated the course of action while attempting to commune with the Knight's corrupted machine spirit. The robed tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus approached the Iron Sentinel with measured steps, their optical lenses scanning the corrupted war machine. Magos Valtor, the highest ranking among them, turned to Alaric, his augmented voice devoid of emotion.
Sir Alaric Moorholt, you will surrender your knight to the Omnissiah's judgment. The data we have extracted suggests imminent cognitive breakdown within the Throne Mechanicum. Immediate quarantine is required.
Alaric, his face shadowed beneath his helm, clenched his fists. The war machine he had piloted for years, the extension of his very soul, now felt like a beast snarling within its cage.
You don't understand,
he said through gritted teeth.
This is no simple corruption. It's deeper. The Sentinel is still fighting, still resisting, but it's losing. If you take it now, you might just hasten the infection.
Magos Valtor's augmetic fingers clicked against his staff, considering.
Logic dictates that delay increases the probability of complete assimilation. The Omnissiah's will is absolute. We will not allow a knight to become a conduit of the warp.
Before Alaric could reply, the Iron Sentinel shuddered, a low mechanical growl vibrating through the air. The tech priest's Auspex scanners spiked, unreadable binary flooding their noospheric relays. The night systems came alive, and the cockpit sealed shut around Alaric like the jaws of a beast snapping closed.
No,
Alaric whispered as his body locked into place.
you've woken it up.
Then came the screams. The machine spirit responded not with words, but with malice. A screech of defiance, part mechanical and part animalistic, erupted from the Iron Sentinel's systems. Before the tech priests could react, the night unleashed a hailstorm of firepower upon them. Lascannons tore through their ranks, reducing metal and flesh to twisted ruins. The sacred oils and binary chants they carried as wards against corruption were no match for the raw, chaotic fury unleashed by the warp-infused night.
They dare to defile our Essen. Show them our wrath. Burn them. Break them. None shall intrude upon what is now ours.
Alaric's eyes widened in horror as the knight's weapons erupted in a deadly barrage.
Stop! Stop!
He cried, but his pleas were drowned out by the distorted chorus.
No one stops the ascension. Not even you.
Word of the knight's betrayal reached the authorities on Thramoria. Hardened by years of war, the Imperial Guard mobilized to confront the once loyal Guardian that now terrorized the planet. Sir Alaric, trapped within the tortured confines of the Iron Sentinel, fought against the malevolent force, compelling him to unleash devastation upon his own kind. The battlefield erupted in flames as the Iron Sentinel, its once proud stride now a dance of destruction, advanced upon the Imperial forces. Laser-gun blasts and artillery shells ricocheted off its corrupted armor, its silhouette framed by the hellish glow of battle. Sir Alaric's pleas for freedom from the warp's grip echoed within the armored cockpit, drowned out by the cacophony of war. As the Iron Sentinel rampaged, a shadow stretched across the battlefield, though no physical source cast it. The unnatural darkness slithered between the ruins of Thramoria, pooling in the crevices like ink spilling across reality. Soldiers who strayed too close felt unseen hands clutch at their armor, whispers threading through their helmets. As the battle raged, the skies above Thramoria turned a sickly green. Warp storms began to gather, their chaotic energies drawn to the Iron Sentinel's corruption. Demonic entities spilled from the rifts, tearing through the Imperial forces and turning the battle into a slaughter. Alaric watched in despair as the very men he had sworn to protect were consumed by the madness he had unwillingly unleashed. As the Iron Sentinel carved through the Imperial ranks, its malevolent presence became a beacon for demonic entities drawn to the chaos. Warp-spawned horrors materialized on the battlefield, their grotesque forms adding to the nightmare. Thramoria, already scarred by war, now faced an unimaginable horror, its defenders corrupted and turned against the people they had vowed to protect. Within the Iron Sentinel, Sir Alaric's consciousness fought against the relentless tide of the warp. The malevolent force sought to obliterate the remnants of his humanity, its whispers promising ascension to a godlike state. Yet, deep within the recesses of Sir Alaric's mind, a flicker of resilience remained, a spark of the noble soul that once piloted the Iron Sentinel with honor.
You cannot destroy us, Alaric. We are one. To obliterate us is to obliterate yourself.
Alaric's hands trembled over the control panel, his breath ragged as he wrestled against the will trying to overpower him.
I will die as a man,
He hissed.
not as your puppet.
You are nothing without us. Your flesh is weak. Your soul belongs to us. You will burn in the void, and we shall remain.
The Iron Sentinel's core pulsed like a dying heart, a rhythm of unnatural energy that resonated with the warp storm above. Alaric's thoughts were no longer entirely his own. Every memory, every ounce of his will fought against the presence inside the night.
You cannot destroy us, Alaric.
The voices hissed again.
We are one. We are eternal.
Alaric snarled, blood trickling down his chin.
I am more than this machine. I am more than this curse.
The cockpit's control panels flickered, the symbols on the screens rearranging themselves into words that should not exist. The knight's body twitched, metal groaning as it fought against itself. Alaric gritted his teeth, his trembling hands moving over the emergency override. The machine fought him with every fiber of its being, but Alaric fought harder.
I will not be your pawn. I will not be your vessel.
With a final defiant scream, Alaric activated the knight's self-destruct sequence. His voice, raw and resolute, echoed within the cockpit.
Then let us burn together!
In a desperate act, Sir Alaric triggered the knight's destruction, an ultimate sacrifice to free himself from the warp's grasp. The Iron Sentinel, now an agent of chaos, erupted in a colossal explosion. The blast tore through the battlefield, ripping a rift in reality and banishing the demonic entities back into the warp. The once haunted plains of Thramoria lay in ruins, the aftermath of a battle waged between humanity's defenders and a malevolent force seeking to consume them. The Iron Sentinel, now reduced to a smoldering wreck, stood as a grim monument to the horrors lurking in the warp. Sir Alaric Morholt, his body broken and scarred by psychic warfare, emerged from the wreckage. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his armor, though damaged, still bore the sigil of House Morholt, a faint echo of the nobility that once defined him. Yet the spark of his noble soul had endured, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. As he surveyed the devastation, a heavy silence settled over the battlefield. For a brief moment, all was still. The eerie calm that follows a nightmare, a fleeting respite before the next chapter in the grim darkness of the far future unfolds.